Okay. How's it going, everyone? It's your number one rated fresh Supreme Soy Boy, and I'm back at it again with another Star Wars video. That's right, the Star Wars fan base is, up to their old shenanigans. I'm just basically making this video to talk about, just the state of things in the Star Wars fan base right now. So, it's been a minute since my last video, a little bit longer than I would have liked it to be. I've got pretty bad writer's block at the moment, and it only really lets up when I get, really passionate about something, or, really angry about something, and, I was lucky enough to get really angry about something recently, so that was cool. So, what I'm kind of, angry about today, when I'm recording this, is Star Wars fan discourse, and what really inspired me to make this video was the recent kerfuffle revolving around Rebel Force Radio? Yes, which is a podcast that's been around for a decent amount of time by now. But anyways, they got kind of embroiled in a lot of drama on Twitter yesterday and the day before, and it was messy, and the end result was they deleted their Twitter over it. So the majority of this recent drama that kind of spurred them to delete their Twitter came from two sources. The first being on their own podcast. They said some pretty inflammatory things about diversity in Star Wars, and also media in general, that just the comments were not very well received because they were not great. I'll leave a link to the audio that I'm referring to in the description below. I don't really want to get too deep into it in this episode. So the second factor in question that caused a bunch of controversy was RFR's deliberate targeting of Star Wars show co-host Andy Gutierrez, in which they literally went and they dug up a 2-year-old picture of her drinking out of a novelty mug that says fanboy tears on it. They kind of put that out there, and they included her Twitter handle on it, and they essentially incited a bunch of hatefulness and just awfulness in her general direction for a picture that's 2 years old. Really just like a real class move on their part. So they were effectively directing all this hate towards her account for being unprofessional and rude to fans. Those are their own words, which is, I'll speak for myself when I say that I personally don't get an aneurysm whenever I see a novelty mug that says fanboy tears on it, and I certainly don't go harass somebody about it, but now I'm gonna get dunked on for virtue signaling or whatever, so what do I know? But all of this is just Star Wars discourse in 2018. This is all kind of par for the course. How many times have we heard stories like this recently? Super recently. The one that comes to mind right now is Kelly Marie Tran, who played Rose in The Last Jedi, needing to delete her Instagram because it was just constantly being flooded with people who were harassing her. The real person. Not the character, not the movie, but an actual person. And it really sucks that that's kind of normal right now. That's just kind of what we've come to expect from Star Wars fans. Not all of them, of course, but toxic fans in general. So the most heartening result of all of this drama was really just how much support that Andy Gutierrez got and how much backlash that RFR received for something that was so blatantly inciting hate and harassment, just so unnecessarily, especially for something that's 2 years in the past, something that petty as well. Rebel Force Radio was actually even removed from their position in Lucasfilm's official list of fan podcasts that they have on the Star Wars website, presumably for inciting harassment against an employee. Who would have thunk it? And then, of course, RFR goes on to delete their Twitter, after which they actually went on to release a statement. In true toxic fan fashion, they paint themselves as the victims in all of this. I'm going to read a selection from that right now. Where's my glasses? Twitter has become a war zone, where tolerance and opposing viewpoints is non-existent. It encourages snark over smart, spite over curiosity, and distortion over truth. Staying there only seems to anger the mobs and place friends under fire. So, in the interest of complete transparency, that was a paraphrase. I've taken sentences out of their complete message. I will link their complete statement in the description below. You will see that I have not distorted their message in any way, really just distilled it down to the most important parts. Regardless, there are some immediate issues with their statement that should jump out to you. For one, all of this is in response to something that they did and then faced the consequences for. And you can't really just say, oh yeah, they were just stating their opinion. You can't just really just call the First Amendment on it, because they were pretty directly inciting harassment against an individual. Secondly, to kind of throw words from their own quote back at them, their actions were certainly intolerant. They were also distorting, because they dug up that picture from 2 years ago and presented it as if it had just happened. And finally, it really only served to further anger the mob of toxic fans that would go out and harass Lucasfilm employees. So this is just one instance, but like I said earlier, this is kind of representative of what Star Wars discourse has become. But if you look at the big picture, Star Wars discourse has actually been really, really bad for a long time. A lot of people are really quick to blame The Last Jedi. It is often talked about as the most controversial Star Wars film. People either love it or they hate it, so of course that's where a lot of this is coming from. In reality, this particular brand of toxicity has existed at least since The Force Awakens. Like, people forget how salty some people got over Finn, a lead character, and a stormtrooper being black. Or how salty they got over Rey being a woman. And then even the more moderate types got super salty about how they felt that the film was a rehash of A New Hope. But people threatened to boycott The Force Awakens because one of the lead characters was black. Which sounds almost kind of unbelievable now, doesn't it? Like, could you imagine if the toxic fans were just gonna come out and say, we aren't gonna see Episode 9 because Finn still isn't white. Just to be clear, to make this distinction, because it is necessary, these people levying that critique were full-on unabashed racists. I'm absolutely not conflating people who just don't like the new movies or thought that The Force Awakens was a rehash with full-on unabashed racists. These are different groups of people who had different critiques, but they often got really, really salty about them. It just sucks that these two groups kind of form a Venn diagram and there's a troubling amount of overlap. So then you're thinking, right, okay, so this all started with The Force Awakens, so clearly this is a Disney issue, right? That's the whole reason. They're not satisfying the fan base. They should be listening to the fans, and things like this wouldn't happen. But in fact, it goes way back before Disney even acquired Lucasfilm. It doesn't take a historian to remember a time where the top things people were complaining about in Star Wars were Hayden Christensen, child actors, CGI sets and actors. It's also really easy to release accountability, you know? You can just step back and say, oh, I'm not the one who bullied Kelly Marie Tran off of Instagram, so I'm in the clear. This breed of toxicity has been growing strong for a really long time. Jake Lloyd, the child actor who played young Anakin in Episode 1, his entire career, his entire life were destroyed by the backlash that his performance caused in Episode 1. Okay, it was a bad performance, but that is a child. Because, I mean, to be clear, this wasn't just people voting with their wallets. This wasn't people just saying, personally, I didn't like The Phantom Menace. This was people persistently bullying a child decades after his movie came out. Again, to be clear, I'm not conflating people who say, oh, I didn't really like his performance, with people who were literally bullying this kid. But it was happening a lot. Hayden Christensen was essentially forced to quit acting, and Ahmed Best, who recently came out about his struggle with depression and thoughts of suicide because of his portrayal of Jar Jar Binks in The Phantom Menace. This man was driven almost to suicide because people didn't like a character in a movie. Now, Best also received an outpouring of support on Twitter recently for becoming public about this, which is awesome. But he shouldn't have been in that position in the first place. You see what I'm saying? Of course, after Lucasfilm's acquisition by Disney, it seems like every toxic fan always brings up, oh, well, if George Lucas was still in charge, oh, if he was the one directing these, if he was the one writing these, this wouldn't be happening. He'd be pleasing the fans. Nobody would be getting, harassed. Nobody would be getting bullied. There just wouldn't be a problem. This is Disney. This is us responding to Disney. And they say all of that as if they're not the exact same type of person who ruthlessly bullied this man for well over 2 decades. Furthermore, his daughter, Katie Lucas, was bullied off of Twitter in 2011 for saying that she didn't like how fans were treating her father. George Lucas sold the franchise the very next year. I'm not necessarily saying that there's a causation, but it seems pretty possible. So this goes way back. I've even seen some fan letters that were released after Empire hit theaters. You know, Empire, which is almost universally regarded as the best Star Wars movie, and people were complaining back then, and they were just as vitriolic as they are now. Why is this? You don't see this kind of behavior with other franchises. So what is it that makes some Star Wars fans so toxic? In my experience interacting with toxic fans on social media and in real life and really any medium you can imagine, it all ultimately seems to boil down to one key factor, and that's a sense of undeserved entitlement. That sense that just because you paid $10 to see a movie in the theaters that somehow it belongs to you. That somehow that ticket purchase or whatever merchandise you bought, or the fact that you bought it on Blu-ray, grants you a seat at the table, and that ultimately, and most importantly, if the film didn't satisfy your own personal tastes, that it failed. When you don't get your way, you go out and harass real people to affect some kind of change or just to make yourself feel better. If you genuinely feel like that, I'm here to tell you a hard truth. Star Wars doesn't belong to the fans. I know, go ahead, crucify me. But Star Wars has never belonged to the fans. Star Wars, like any other film, belongs to the people who put their blood, sweat, and tears into it. It belongs to the people who put days, months, years, even decades into a property just to hope against hope that it's going to make fans happy. Quite frankly, the team at Lucasfilm are, and always have been, some of the most self-sacrificing people in the entertainment industry. And to be totally honest, we don't deserve them one bit. Now, you can dislike whatever you want to dislike. How much effort they've put into something doesn't obligate you to enjoy it. There are certainly people out there who don't like newer Star Wars. There are people who don't like the prequels. Hell, there are probably even some people who don't like Empire. You're not obligated to like anything. You can dislike what you want to dislike. I'm not here to preach about that. But if you truly believe that harassing creatives and actors is a natural part of disliking a movie, you need to take a long, hard look at yourself. Whew. That was a long tirade. I gotta drink some soy. Replenish my estrogen. If you're wondering about this, by the way, this was a fan poster somebody created for The Last Jedi remake. It's a parody, but I just like it, so I put it up. The Last Jedi remake campaign, by the way, as of yesterday, I think, they were at over $450 million, but, they've faded from the public zeitgeist, so, of course, we haven't heard anything about that. Not that it's real money to begin with, so... speaking of which, though, because of my first video, I was actually invited to write an article for the StarWarsHub.net. Yeah, I was really happy with it. It was kind of just a write-up of the video version that was updated. I kind of went more in depth into it. I'll link that in the description down below. Anyways, that about does it for me. Thank you for watching this video. If you disagree with anything I had to say, feel free to let me know below. If you agree, okay, feel free to let me know that too. But yeah, if you like the video, make sure to hit the like button. Make sure to hit the subscribe button if you want to see more content like this. I'm going to be releasing between 1 and 2 videos every couple of weeks on topics related to Star Wars, but also movies in general. So if you want to kind of see where that goes, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the little bell icon as well. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. See you later.